I think I need to clean the coffee maker. It doesn't exactly taste great today. Uh, Run the vinegar through, do all that. So part two of are women the problem? Again, the answer is kind of. I don't know, like I'm all about cause and effect, right? So I don't understand why women are acting the way they are, and it's probably a whole bunch of series of indirect things. But again, to reiterate, in case you didn't see the first thing, I'm definitely not an incel red pill women hater. In fact, I love women. I generally prefer to spend time with women over men. I don't like locker room talk or all that stuff. And I know that women do it too, but they don't do it when I'm there. They wait until I like go to the bathroom and then they talk about me behind my back, right? And probably not in a positive way, considering what we got going on up here, you know? Anyways, I've got no delusions. So, I mean, I probably have some delusions, but not about how the world perceives me, at least. We all have our delusions, right? But I'm looking at these statistics, trying to fix the world and get us out of the dark timeline that we're on. And to do that, I have analyzed all kinds of things. I mentioned, I think getting off social media would help. I know I upload a lot, but I barely watch it. The one that I spend the most time on Twitter, it is the one that I spend the most time on is Twitter. And that may sound counterintuitive, but I don't have the same negative experience on Twitter that most people complain about. I think people have forgotten that you do have some ability to curate what you see, especially on Twitter. The only time I really had negative experiences on Twitter was several years ago. Um, there was just like a bunch of random like hentai and lolly stuff that started showing up in my feed. And I was like, where the fuck is this coming from? It was because one of the other content creators that I know and followed was following all those accounts. And I unfollowed him immediately. No, it wasn't Lakari. But it just got rid of my timeline so quickly. Uh, it got to the point where once I realized that, I wanted to reset my entire Twitter. So I unfollowed literally everyone, took it down to zero, and I started following people back slowly. And my timeline has been so much healthier ever since then. Most of the stuff I see these days are musicians talking about their music, artists and writers talking about their writing. I've recently gotten into coding Twitter. Coding Twitter is pretty cool. I don't understand half the stuff that they're talking about, but I'm learning about it. I don't understand 90% of the stuff they're talking about, but I'm learning about it. And um, there's also just this small vein of eugenicist Twitter. I don't know how I ended up on eugenicist Twitter, but it's always funny to watch them say, stay alive 5 more years. In 5 more years, we're all going to be living for 300 years. And then 5 years later, stay alive 5 more years. In 5 more years, we're all going to be living for 300 years. But I find it entertaining, but I also enjoy that because it's still hopeful, right? You see so many negative doomers on the internet. Everyone's talking about, oh, Twitter's the most negative platform. And don't get me wrong, there is some negativity stuff. I follow that Yeet drama channel. It's like a content creator drama channel. It's fun to watch that stuff, but I think you need to learn not to let it affect you internally and not to get addicted to it, right? It's like I'll see that pop up, stuff like that pop up once every 10 tweets. The other stuff, it's just like, here, if you want to cleanse your timeline, the two best Twitter accounts I've found for cleansing your timeline are Wholesome Side of X and Dudes Posting Their W's. Those two accounts, just awesome little funny or lighthearted clips that are totally great for helping to cleanse your timeline. I think the reason I'm talking so much about social media is I don't think it's necessarily the women that are at fault, but it's their lack of ability to emotionally regulate and the fact that social media is designed to prey on your emotions. So I find this to be a extremely concerning thing, by the way, because I don't remember. I looked up the name before this. It's like Olwyn or Orwin or something like that. Probably not even close to that. But there's a guy who did a study of 80 civilizations or something like that. I'm getting ahead of myself real quick. The reason I'm talking about social media particularly is because I look at all kinds of metrics like college graduation rates, violent crime rates, marriage rates, all sorts of things like that. And I notice that the timeline gets darker every time a new type of media emerges. Uh, I I didn't realize it at first, right? I was looking at these metrics and I was like, oh, there's a dip there. Oh, there's a dip there. Oh, there's a dip there. What happened? What keeps pushing us into the darker timeline? And then I was like looking at things that happened and I was like, oh, wait, radio came out at that first dip. And when I say came out, I mean was like widely available because often these new technologies were developed either in secret or at a limited capacity that the general public didn't really use at first, right? So it was like the first dip was radio, and then the second one was TV, and then the next one was internet. And I think we're going to see another dip when we look back in 5 or 10 years with the release of AI. Why do I say when we look back in 5 or 10 years? Because it often takes time to aggregate this data. Generally, most of these statistics run about 2 to 3 years behind what we're actually looking at. And with what I'm looking at, I need to see trends, right? I need to just not see the year by year because there's always fluctuations, right? I need to see trends overall. So to see a 3 year trend, I need like 5 years of data. And I think AI is going to show another big dip, maybe the biggest dip ever. So far, TV, I think, has been the biggest dip. Uh, I got to look at the data again. I don't have it all lined up anymore. I'd love to have the time just to sit down and do statistical data analysis, but man's got to work to put food on the table, and no one's paying me to do this, right? At least not because people don't want me to fix the problems because the problems are profitable. So fixing the problems is unprofitable. Anyways, I'm rambling now. Let me refocus. So I started looking at other data and I found that chart, not the one that's been going viral, because that's like a stripped down, simplified version of the one I saw that's shorter and is lacking information. I haven't been able to find the one I saw, which is kind of frustrating. Part of it is probably because I'm using Brave Search instead of Google, and it's just not as good at searching. But we also have all the data overload these days too, where especially once something goes viral, all I can find is reposts of the viral chart now, not the original chart that I was looking for. But uh, to reiterate, what happens is there's this chart that's going viral, and it shows the I don't want my hands in front of my face while I'm talking. It shows the ideological alignment, like the average of men and women over time in the US, I think specifically, or maybe the world, but at least one of them was in the US. And going back to the 90s is the viral chart because that's the one that I found, but I'm pretty sure the original one showed back to the 70s or maybe even earlier than that. But the the interesting thing is if you look, women are generally more left leaning. Left is up here at the top, and men are. I just realized the subtitles are going to be in front of my face during that, but whatever. And men are generally more right leaning. That's down here at the bottom, and this is how it was on the chart originally. The most interesting thing, though, is throughout history, at least here in the US, when women move left, men also move left. And when men or women move right, the other one also moves right, right? So if you look throughout the chart, they go up and down together. And this is like based on all kinds of other things like events and stuff. Like terrorist attacks generally going to drive people right. I don't know. Hedonism generally drives people left and things like that. So until 2017, 2017, men do a slight right turn, but women just start shooting like off into the middle of nowhere. And it's absolutely mind boggling because now keep in mind graphs can be deceptive. And that's why I really want to see the one going back to older periods, the 70s and stuff. And one of the ways they do that is based off scale. But women have reached a point, according to the viral version of the graph, that they are so far insanely extremist left that they have never been there or even remotely close to that in the history of the United States. Whereas for the most part, men are just right within the normal variance. And the crazy thing about that is when people are talking about the growing divide between men and women, I constantly see it being portrayed by the media as men going conservative. But in reality, men haven't gone anywhere. They're just sitting on the back porch sipping beer. Meanwhile, it's the women that are going to these levels of extremism. And then they're trying to blame men for going extremist when the men are just operating as normal. Of course, these are averages, right? Uh, so I find that very concerning, especially because I don't really know how to fix it. I have all kinds of theories as to things we could help close the gap, but that's for another video entirely. I think the reason I find it super concerning is this guy whose name I can't remember. You know what? Give me a second. I'm going to go look it up again. I have it on my J.D. Unwin. He did some studies called Sex and Culture back in the 1930s. I really need to track this down and read the whole thing. I just have an AI synopsis, trust but verify, right? But So it could all be wrong because I have not fully verified it yet. I will readily admit this. I just don't have time to sit and read all day at the moment. I have bills that need to be paid. Uh, I barely have time to do this, but I keep going because I believe this is important. I feel like if I just don't say something, the United States dies, and I love this country. What he found is he tracked some 80 different civilizations and six grand empires, like the Roman Empire and a few others like that, and not accounting for external collapse, things like invasions or unpredictable natural disasters, something like that. We're talking about solely from internal collapse. One of the biggest and most damning indicators was right before these great ancient civilizations failed, and even the small ones. It was consistent across all of them with insane, scary accuracy. One of the biggest indicators before an imminent and total internal collapse was a massive rift between men and women. Politically, declining birth rates, ideologically. Politically and ideologically are two separate things, but for some people that have no depth or intelligence, they're the same thing. But across all these different metrics, there was this huge gap between men and women, a huge spike in divorces, and a huge reduction in marriages. And this is exactly what we're seeing in the United States right now. I've been saying for about 3 years now, I'm worried about an imminent collapse. And this most recent data that I've seen from this J.D. Unwin, or whatever his name was, Sex and Culture, 1934, I think it was, it's only making me more worried and make me feel that the collapse is more imminent than I realized. I don't know if we survive to 2035 at this point. We might have less than 10 years left of this country, which is sad and terrifying, right? I don't know how to fix it either. Because here's the thing. I think even though it kind of is women causing the problem, it's the responsibility of men to fix it. And what do I mean by that? Well, weak men create hard times. Everyone knows that saying, right? If you don't, the whole saying is weak men create hard times create strong men, strong times create good men create sorry. I messed that up. Let me restart. I was trying to bust it out too quickly. I think it actually starts with good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and the cycle continues, right? And the general basic understanding for this for most people is like strong men, they show up to work, they do the job, they go home, and they don't bother anyone, right? Weak men do the opposite. They no call, no show constantly. They are they don't go home. They spend all day at the bar and then do crack off a stripper's ass and then go stab someone in a alleyway for their meth, right? So that is part of it. But I think the real underlying thing comes from another quote, and one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is that behind every great man, there's an even greater woman rolling her eyes. So I think the big problem is that men are too weak to say no, right? And because of that, you have these wild women that are just getting away with everything. So even though it's kind of women causing the problem, it's not necessarily their fault because they're just flying off the handle constantly. Like, I watched a lot of body cam footage. It's kind of one of my guilty pleasures, you know? And it's actually insane to watch the way that, on average, there's always outliers, of course, men and women react differently when getting arrested, right? Uh, Men generally are a lot more combative before the cuffs go on. They'll be like talking crap after they're cuffed or things. They'll be like, "Man, take the badge off, take these cuffs off, take the badge off, meet me outside," and stuff like that. But it's like after they're cuffed, the fight is all gone. But before the cuffs go on, they will like absolutely just throw you through a window or something, right? With women, it's exactly the opposite, where they're like being all cutesy and trying to talk their way out of it, and they like almost never talk their way out of it. And then the moment they go into cuffs, the demons come out and they're putting themselves through a window. You know, it's just they're like pissing in the back of the police car, like the most insane, degenerate shit that you don't see men doing 90% of the time, unless it's just a dude that's tripped out on fent or something. But it's like the regular women are doing this, like just super rich soccer moms driving Land Rovers through parades or whatever that is. There's a example I'm thinking of that is insane. This super rich trophy wife slash soccer mom, whatever, drives her vehicle through a Thanksgiving Day parade or something. And then she starts flipping out when they arrest her for doing that. There's another one where I can't even remember, but the the video's burned into my brain, like the images of it, the way she was staring at the cop, she has the crazy eyes, you know what I'm saying? Um, just this super entitled, and it's usually white women, if we're being honest, or white passing women. It's generally not super um distinct minorities. Also, it's usually pretty women too. It's not the ugly women. It's like the ugly women, I guess, have had a dose of reality for their entire life. But I had this neighbor in college who was one of those pretty women that was so attractive she could just get away with everything. No accountability, no conflict resolution whatsoever. She would just cause problems, and no one ever held her accountable because the women wanted to be her and the men wanted to fuck her. And it was so fucking annoying. Uh, She lived directly above me when I was in an off campus apartment, and they were the worst neighbors. everyone else in the building got along fine with. There were freaking drug addicts on the third floor that we got along totally fine with. I even like would go up and like smoke a little weed with them and something, and someone would come and just fucking blast it on Molly. It'd be like, man, I'm never trying that stuff. You're not even present here. How'd you get here? You know? But they never caused any problems. It it was the fucking dance girls that caused all the problems for everyone in that entire building. They were Everyone else was chill, just trying to hang out, have a good college experience, and it was this one room of three girls that caused all the problems for everyone. And they were super entitled, super obnoxious, super unrepentant about everything. They were the loudest group in the entire apartment building. And I think they actually called the cops on us twice and complained to the landlord. They wrote a whole letter to the landlord because my one of my roommates had a party for his girlfriend one weekend for her birthday, and that was just like unacceptable to them that we would do that at a normal time during the weekend. And they had all these complaints about the landlord, and nothing ever came of it because we just responded back to the landlord. We were like, they throw like 5 to 10 times the number of parties of anyone else in the apartment. We just haven't said anything about it. They are constantly making noise. We can hear them through the floor all the time because they were all dancers, or at least I think two of them were. So they were just constantly stomping on the floor the entire time. It was insane. And they never had any kind of accountability or conflict resolution. And the reason I say that particularly is because I was taking voice and guitar lessons. So I literally had to practice voice and guitar for my grades because I was taking them for credit. So if I didn't practice weekly, sometimes like I should have practiced daily, but I practiced every 2 or 3 days generally. If I didn't practice my singing and my guitar playing, I would actually fail a class, right? So, this one girl that I had issues with, she kept sending her boyfriend down to interrupt my practice sessions. And every week it was a different damn boyfriend. I would be practicing during the middle of the day, right? It's not like the night or anything. It's like 3 in the afternoon or whatever. I'm practicing my vocals that I'm supposed to sing, and it's not anything insane too. The first teacher I had, she would only teach musical theater. It's just like Les Mis and shit like that, right? It's not like I'm fucking screaming Lamb of God or anything constantly, just blasting heavy drum beats or anything like that, or shredding on the guitar. I was like playing Jason Mraz on guitar and singing fucking musicals. And so I'd get a knock on the apartment door. I'd be like, "Hey, what's up?" It'd be like, "Who are you?" And it would be like, "I'm blank's boyfriend." I'd be like, "Oh, another one," because it was a different dude every single week. I'm like, "Damn, how many boyfriends does this girl have?" You know? And they all thought they were her boyfriend. So I don't know what was going on there, but we're not gonna get into it. I'd be like, "Oh, you too, huh?" So they'd be like, "What's up, dude?" And she'd be like, "Can you like stop?" And I'd be like, "No, I've got grades. I talked about this with the other dude last week." And he'd be like, "What other dude?" And I'd be like, I put little hints in there, you know? I'd be like, yeah, she sent some other dude down last week to complain about the same thing. And it got to the point where, like, every week or, like, every few days, she was sending a different guy to come talk to me. And they would all just be like, oh, yeah, like, I thought, yeah, it's like, no, dude, I'm just practicing. I have this is a grade. I need to do this. And be like, okay, yeah, whatever. Well, it's like 3 in the afternoon. And I'm like, I don't do it at times when it's disruptive. And it was like, well, can you do it when she's not here? It's like, I don't know when she's not here. So I ended up, I think I found her Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I sent her a DM. I'm like, hey, I don't understand why we're like being super confrontational neighbors or anything. First of all, why can't I didn't say this, but in my head, I was thinking, why can't you just show up and talk to me like a goddamn human being adult instead of sending your random boy toy of the weekend to come deal with your problems for you? The second thing is what I actually said. Well, I was really polite. I was like, hey, I need to do this for my grades. This I'm literally taking these lessons for credits. I need to practice, and if I don't, I'll fail. If you send me your class schedule, I will specifically set up my practice times so that I'm practicing when you're at class and not here and it doesn't bother you. And she never even responded. However, that was the last time. Uh, she didn't send any more boy toys to bother me after that. So it worked. But I just think I was maybe the first guy in her life that was ever able to say no to her, right? And it's absolutely because she was definitely very pretty. One of the prettiest girls at the school. I'll give her that. So I think really what it boils down to is these problems are caused by generations. Because here's the thing, times have been so good in the United States for so long, you don't know how good you have it. You can be the poorest 1% of the population in the United States and still be probably the richest 80% of the population in the entire world, right? Our homeless people have smartphones. Our homeless people have seafood boils, right? It's just absolutely insane how rich and easy comparatively life in the United States is. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of problems that need to be fixed here, and they're only getting worse. But the reason that they're getting worse is because we aren't addressing the problems. We're focusing on all these weird, superficial symptoms, and we're also letting bad people get away with bad shit, right? It's not just women. Uh, it's also just crime and stuff in general. And it's not just white collar crime, right? Because that's super rampant right now. We have a president that's contributing to crypto insider trading schemes and all kinds of things like that, which is absolutely terrible for the economy. It's uh, the but at the same time, on the opposite side, that's the Republicans being soft on crime. It's both parties are soft on crime. It's just which kind of crime they're soft on. The Republicans like to say that they're tough on crime, but they totally ignore white collar crime, right? Whereas the Democrats like to say they're tough on crime by saying, oh, yeah, we're going after all this corruption. But first of all, that's a lie because how many Democrats are in the Epstein files? We're just going to keep going. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But what they really do is they ignore blue collar or worker level crime. And like the thing that still gets me upset is the poor Ukrainian refugee woman that was slaughtered on the subway by a dude that had a laundry list of criminal record that's longer than my hair. So That dude should have never been just out there roaming about. We're too soft on crime at all levels, right? This is eroding everything everyone that came before us worked so hard to build. We need to learn to just say no and hold people accountable regardless. And the other thing we need to do is mend the valley between men and women. Now, it's important to say that some people you just can't save, right? I think a lot of it is going to need to require women coming back into the fold, right? Because when you look at all the statistics, men haven't really gone anywhere for the most part. It's the women that are way off in outer space right now. Now, how's that going to happen? Well, it's not going to be me, a man, telling them to do that, right? Because they're not going to listen. In the same way that, like, there's this huge level of cognitive dissonance in the United States right now, where the very thing that is the opposite of what you believe somehow is twisted to be evidence of what you believe, right? Women that don't want to heal, that are the ones that are most damaged, that need this message the most, are going to try and play this off like I'm some kind of misogynist that is trying to enslave them. But that's exactly the opposite. I believe in equal partnerships. But the problem these days is women don't want equal partnerships, right? They want to be making more money than their man, have the man pay for everything, have the man carry them over puddles, have the man fight all their battles for them. There is no equality in that partnership, whatever. There is a feminine superiority complex that I believe is at the core of why women are so far detached from reality right now. None of the women that really need that anchor are going to listen to me because, again, they're just going to see this as an example of the patriarchy and the misogyny. But when you really boil it down, the patriarchy, at least in modern westernized cultures, is very much a myth. Now, in certain other cultures where women don't even have the right to get driver's license or things like that, different matter entirely. But here, there's an old saying by Voltaire I like. I don't know the exact quote. Some people like to quote me on correct one word in the comments, and I think that's funny. It's like you kind of missed the point, dude. But I saw one the other day where the guy like corrected it, but then he was like, "But I get what you're saying." I'm like, "Okay, yeah. I appreciate the corrections. I do want to say that, but don't lose sight of what I'm trying to say by splitting hairs." Voltaire said something along the lines of, if you want to know who's really in charge, just look at who you're not allowed to criticize. And I feel like the best examples were actually given to us by AI, where people, I don't know if the model still does this, but there was a model of ChatGPT where you would ask it for a joke making fun of a woman, and it was like, I can't do that, that's sexist. And then you'd ask it for a joke making fun of a man, and it would tell you like the most disgusting and deplorable jokes, right? And what this boils down to is men may rule the world, but women run it. And I don't really think there's a problem with that setup. As I said, we need an equal partnership. But the issue is that women aren't taking responsibility for the state of the society they're creating. And men are don't have the backbone to stand up and saying no. They're just being drug along relentlessly, right? Because even when you look at all these powerful men that are supposedly causing all the problems, Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, there's always an Ivanka Trump or Ghislaine Maxwell whispering in their ear, really driving it the whole time, right? Because Donald Trump has even said up on stage, I would say other things than this, but my wife told me I couldn't. Uh, Ghislaine Maxwell, even after her and Jeffrey broke up, she was the one that was still recruiting those little girls, sending them off to him. I think, unfortunately, if we don't correct this problem, there is going to be a disastrous reckoning coming for women. And I really hope we don't see that day because I love women. There is a whole other aspect of this I want to talk about, and I'm running out of space on my phone. So I need to wrap this up. I feel like this is an insanely complex thing that I have spent years observing, and I don't know if y'all understand it. I'm sure I'm probably going to lose followers, which is funny because I just had like a little follower boost. Every single time I get a little follower boost, I have this idea. I'm like, yo, I need to talk about that. But everyone's going to rage quit my channel. But if you want to understand where I'm coming from, I highly suggest you read Sex and Culture from 1934 by J.C.J.D. Orwell or something like that. I want to look it up and read the whole thing myself, but needless to say, the statistics and conclusions in it are quite interesting. I've got to go do the edits and uploads and some actual work to pay for some things, but I'm going to wrap this up, and probably a few hours later today, I'll talk about more about my specific view on the differences and the partnership between men and women. And I do want to say, just this isn't necessarily a whole there's only two genders type thing. I believe there are theoretically infinite genders. When I say men and women, we're talking about the masculine and the feminine. And every single relationship I have ever seen, whether it were a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship, for it to be successful, there always has to be one masculine and one feminine. I've never seen a single relationship that is healthy and sustainable that has two feminine personalities or two masculine personalities. So, like, men and women is more of a general catch all term because biologically, 98% of us fall into that, whereas the loud minority is the 2% of people that are non-binary. So I'm not forgetting about you if you're watching this and you're one of those people. I'm just saying you don't fix the problems with society as a whole by lasering in on the 2%. You need to address the larger wound first, right? So all I have to say left at this point is make sure you're armed and training. Delete your... Don't do that. I almost said delete yourself. Delete Google's... What? Okay, let's try this again. My brain is fried. I think the aliens or the government just hit me with like a microwave or something. A microwave gun. Um, I am an Android drone, in case you weren't wondering. In case you were wondering, because you weren't wondering, but now you are. Maybe there's a solar flare or something, and that's why I can't talk all of a sudden. Make sure you're armed and training. Delete Windows. De-Google yourself. I got it right that time. I love all of you, and God bless America. Cheers.